be a for us, and just got to be ready for it. And taking from it, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are different. They change a lot throughout the season, so we could take some things, but I'm assuming they'll do some things differently as well. So we just got to be ready for the tactical adjustments that they make.
We saw Kristaps out there shooting threes. How far along is he? Basically, what's the update with him as far as
he's getting better. Getting better. He's out there shooting. Went through a couple of drills in practice, so progressing well and kind of confident where he's at right now.
Would you say confident in his availability for game one?
I'm confident where he's at on whatever day today is.
Yeah, Coach, over here. How you doing? Two things. Rightly or wrongly, Kyrie is going to be perceived as a villain in the series.
Aren't we all? In someone's eyes.
Pardon me?
We're all villains in someone's eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just how, you guys are good at tuning out the noise. Is that something that you take into consideration?
Listen, he's a great player. He's done a lot of good things. I think just how he's carried himself, how he's played this postseason has been one of the fun things to watch as one of the themes in the NBA. So he's a great player. Done a lot of great things over the course of his career, and he's playing really well. So you have to respect that. You can't take that for granted, and you have to be ready to guard him at a high level. It's the most important thing.
Yeah, and I just want to say I like him personally from my time here. But the other thing I wanted to ask you was Dallas has a penchant for playing close games, clutch games, and they win a lot of them. They've lost some of them. How much do you take that into consideration game planning?
I mean, I think it's the philosophy remains the same. You can look at close games and you have to go to the start of quarters and the end of quarters, and you have to go to the reason why those became a close game. And then when you're in close games, you have to know that it's not necessarily a crapshoot, but it's a 50-50. You got to make plays. You have to make shots. You got to make more plays than the other team. And so we just came out of 3 of those situations where we were fortunate enough to win because we made plays at necessary times. And so there's 2 lessons there. There's the start of quarters, end of quarters, which we weren't great at in the Indiana series. We were great at the end of the 4th, but we weren't great at the end of the 1st or the 2nd or the 3rd at times. And that's the reason why games can become close, because of those runs. So both of those things are just as important. And when you get into the end of the game, you just have to stay disciplined in playmaking and executing late game situations.
Joe, you've talked a lot about the atmosphere of the playoffs, how it's same game, but a heightened atmosphere. Obviously, in the finals, it's an even heightened atmosphere. You mentioned some of the Kyrie stuff, Kristaps going against his own team, old team. How do you manage all that?
I didn't mention any of that stuff.
Bob did. Yeah. How do you manage all of that from an expectation standpoint and also an atmosphere standpoint in this series?
Yeah, I mean, what goes into winning a playoff game is no different than a regular season game. So you just have to have a heightened awareness to the details, to the effort, to the execution amongst all the things that are at stake. If you study finals games and championship atmospheres, it's the team that plays the hardest. It's the team that is the toughest. It's the team that's the most physical. And it's the team that executes at the highest level over and over again. And it's the team that can withstand, mistakes. It's 2 of the best teams left, and both teams are vying for a championship. And so both teams are going to make mistakes. Both teams are going to get punched in the face. Both teams are going to have to respond. So you have to have a level of that as well. And I think that the team that's able to withstand all of that is the team that has the best chance.
Managing Luka defensively, guarding him, a guy who does that much offensively. What's the mindset there? And you've talked about kind of living with some things. How do you go about that when there's a guy who does as much as he does for their offense?
Yeah, you just got to be very aware of what you're willing to live with and what you're willing to take away, and when it's time to adjust. I think there's not one coverage. There's not one player. It's going to take multiple coverage. It's going to take multiple players. It's going to take a team effort. And you just have to have a clear understanding of what you're willing to live with and what you're willing to take away and how those things change over the course of the game. Your defense is connected to your offense and vice versa. So if you're having empty possessions on the offensive end, giving up transition, giving up offensive rebounds, there's no half-court adjustment. If you're managing the game properly with your offensive execution, getting back in transition, holding them to one shot, then your adjustments are different. So you just have to have an understanding of how the game is going and, do what's necessary at that particular time.
Saw the clip of you talking after game 4 to the group about the fact you guys had a taste of this a couple of years ago. I'm just curious, having gone through it a short time ago, having a bunch of guys with finals experience, what can you take from that going into this series to be as prepared as possible for what's ahead?
Yeah, I don't think it's just that experience. I think everything's about timing. And so when you have a group of guys, veteran guys, some have been here for a long time, some have been around the league for a long time. You just have to use each guy's experience. Doesn't necessarily mean it's that particular one. The majority of the people in the room are able to pull from that, but we have a bunch of different guys, different players and coaches that have been in different atmospheres. So just relying on each guy's experience and each guy's expertise and each guy's kind of what they've been through and try to use it for us to kind of execute together.
You said if you study all finals games, have you studied all final games?
Most of them, yeah.
What were you trying to get from that, and what did you take away from the study of the finals game? How far back did you go with that?
Yeah, I mean, probably early 90s, but it all comes down to the same thing. Like once you get rid of the fact that you're playing in the finals and playing for a chance to win, it comes down to rebounding, transition defense, offensive execution, knowing your personnel, situational basketball. The team that's playing the hardest, team that gets the most offensive rebounds, like it's very, very simple. Just because it's simple doesn't mean it's not overly hard to do. And so I think not necessarily the game plan isn't simple, but the things that go into winning at this level are very, very simple. You just have to do them with a high level of physicality and discipline.
When did you study those? When did you decide to do that?
I mean, throughout, since I've gotten in the NBA, you want to study. I think, when you get in a situation, you always want to know the why. Why does the team win? Why does the team lose? Why is the game close? Why was it a blowout? Why is this a narrative and this wasn't? Why is this more important than this? And so I think if you can get to the question of why, you have to look back at all those things. And so, I think it gives you a good perspective, and that's really the way that you ignore all the kind of the stuff that doesn't matter. Is you just get to the stuff that matters the most.
And shifting gears a bit, Dallas's defense, the numbers just kind of took off the season, especially after the trade deadline. How have they kind of remodeled things there, and what have you seen that have made them so tough to score on, especially since they got those guys?
Yeah. They protect the rim really well, and they're malleable. Like they'll change matchups, they'll change coverages. They have a bunch of different ways that they can force you into overthinking, force you into taking the shots or making the plays that you don't necessarily want to take. I think they did a good job of that in the first half last night. So they have an innate ability to change on the fly, and they do a lot of things really, really well. And so they're well coached and well prepared in that, and then their players really buy into the effort that it takes to protect the rim, to make multiple efforts to execute at a high level.
Joe, you talk about things are the same. Winning is the same, but the surroundings do change in the finals, where you don't practice here, you practice at the arena. The cadence of your day changes. How does that impact what you're trying to do when the routine that you've been used to for all of these games changes?
I mean, the routines I think the thing about the NBA, it's an ever-flowing change. You're constantly in a different arena, in a different gym. Sometimes shoot-arounds are at the arena. Sometimes they're at a gym that you have to find. Sometimes you don't have shoot-around. Sometimes the game's at 7:30. Sometimes it's in a different time zone. I don't really think any of that matters. What matters is just the details and the things that go into executing at the highest level. And I think it's the most important thing.
Joe, everyone looks at basketball generally as like who scores the most points. It's all about trying to get points. And so many of the principles you talked about this year almost emphasize everything away from that to make that almost like a natural result of everything you do. So when you get to the finals, how much is like one thing like a rotation or decision on defense magnified and define what ultimately happens? And how important is it to like focus on almost everything away from like who could be the best scorer and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than the regular season. There's always something to individually, but there's always something to go after as a team. And like you just have to have a heightened awareness for what impacts winning on a game basis. There's themes for the series. There's themes for each game, and then each game is going to present problems, opportunities, and solutions. You just got to be open-minded and ready to attack those. And it's two really good teams. Every time you're on the floor, and great players out there, and you just have to be ready to adjust and to make plays on both ends of the floor throughout the entire series.
And now that you guys are in the finals, Jalen and Jason, their relationship, obviously kind of like tension of just wanting to be the best, becomes this narrative for so many talking heads around the country or world. From your perspective, does that seem far-fetched? And I guess just what has it been like your experience with these guys over the last few years?
That's a really good question. I'm kind of praying about how deep I really want to get into that, because the whole thing about that really pisses me off, and I think it's unfair to both of them. And I think it's stupid that people have to use those two guys' names and used information that they don't know to create clickbait so that they could stay relevant. And it's very unfair that those two get compared. They're two completely different people. They're two completely different players. They're great teammates. They love each other, and they go about winning, and they go about their process in a different way. So why they have to always be lumped together, I think, is unfair, and people just use it for their own relativity. And at the end of the day, those two guys, their relationship is their relationship. They love each other. They push each other every single day in practice. They communicate with each other, but they go about winning differently. And I think that both get an unfair, what's the word, like being compared to each other. They're different. You see other duos around the league don't have to go through that. And it's because of the platform that they have. It's because they've been so successful their entire careers. They've been able to long stand success at a high level. And so people need them in order to stay relevant. And they should not talk on speculation. They should get to know them as people before they talk about that stuff. They're two of the greatest teammates and players that you could have, and it's been an honor to coach both of them. Doesn't mean they have to be the same. So it's bullshit. I love both of them, and they deserve better.
So your whole philosophy has been don't expect anything. Don't enter this series or any expectations besides trying to win. This ultimate match, this cage match, you're a UFC guy, all that. How far do your guys? Is it just? Are you telling your guys go to the nth degree to get don't expect anything? How do you kind of manage that no expectations in a series where you're just the ultimate fight?
I mean, it's just to me that whole thing is about just not having a sense of entitlement. Like you just can't be entitled to think that you're going to win a game or think that you're going to be the harder playing team or think that you like this whole thing about like this entitlement towards success is like that's what the no expectation is. Like you can't go into this thinking that you're going to be an easy road. Like it just takes what it takes. And so as long as you stay open-minded to the journey and the process and all the details that go in, and then at the same time how you're able to respond when something doesn't go your way, that's what you have to be ready for. And that's any fight. That's life. So I think the guys do a good job of that, finding that balance. And it's just important to say that. I mean, you see so many championship runs. You don't know how they're going to go. Some teams have gone 4-1. Sometimes it's gone to 7. Sometimes it's gone to 6. Sometimes it was 5. Lakers beat the Magic. It was 5 games, but 3 of them they were losing with 3 minutes to go. Like you just don't know how it's going to go. But if you spend more time worried about that your expectations weren't met, then you're not able to be in the present and execute when it's necessary. And I thought the Indiana series, the guys played with of entitlement, and they were solely focused on the process of what it took to win the next possession. And I think that kept us in it.